Coming up, the NBA trade deadline has passed, and the Brooklyn Nets made some sizable moves. We break down the franchise-altering Kevin Durant trade to the Phoenix Suns, talk about Kyrie Irving, the haul of picks and players that came back in, and ultimately where this franchise stands in the short and long term going forward. All coming up next.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Brooklyn, yo. Yes, my friends, it is the new look Locked On Nets podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team, the new look Brooklyn Nets, every single day. Over there, you're going to find Doug Norrie, owner-operator of DFSR, for all your daily fantasy sports rankings from DraftKings to FanDuel. He's got you covered. I'm Adam Armbrecht, breaking down the New York Football Giants on the One Giant podcast. My boy, Andy Mack. We thank you for making us your first listen of the day, free on all those great platforms, and let you know that this episode is brought to you by Rocket Money. Stop throwing your money away, cancel unwanted subscriptions, and manage your expenses the easy way by going to rocketmoney.com/LockedOnNBA. And Doug, as we welcome in live YouTube subscribers to the post-deadline podcast, set the scene here, my friend. You had to travel. I'm sure it was totally cool around 1 a.m. when a seismic shift happened here. Kevin Durant, the trade with the Phoenix Suns, we're going to basically go from the highest possible level down here. In return, 4 first-round picks, an additional first-round swap. Jae Crowder passes through. The Nets receive an additional 5 second-round picks from the Bucks there. TJ Warren out with Kevin Durant, and coming back, Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson. Take it away, Doug.
Well, you learn a couple things from this. The first is it's just you're bad when you turn your notifications off at night during the trade deadline. So that's problem number one. And number two is you learn in the NBA that what you thought 1 hour can change to the next hour. And I think that's like the lesson that we pretty much learned here. In addition to being a massive disappointment to see Kevin Durant go, I don't think there's anything else. I mean, there's tons to be said about that, but that's just like sort of the baseline feeling. It's that we walked out of Wednesday night's podcast with feeling pretty firm, like, hey, this isn't really going to happen. And then that was submarined within about 4 hours from the time that we hit stop on the recording. And I think that's just the nature of the NBA and how quickly things can move. And look, just on a high level, you never, ever want to lose Kevin Durant. That's just, it's the hierarchy of the NBA, the way it's constructed these days, and really almost always is you want to consolidate your good players at the top and deal with the rest of it. Like, that's how you win championships, talent consolidation and filling in the pieces. You're not going to win championships by just being kind of good in a lot of different places and not being great anywhere. It's just the way there's only 5 players that can play on the court at a time, and the best players have an outsized impact on it. So when you lose Kevin Durant, it's brutal. I think some of the pieces of this that have come out over the last couple hours before we're recording this 3:30 Eastern time, so a half hour after the deadline kind of came to a close with pencils down, some of the details around the Durant thing make sense, even though I kind of hate it. and we can dive into that, but yeah, just on like a franchise altering shift, this is as big as it gets. This is the biggest one. This may be the biggest trade in history. In season trade, it might go down as the biggest one in history. Like, Kevin Durant is that good. Phoenix gets that much better. Yeah, the Nets got some pieces back. We'll be cheering for some of these guys for a while. But when you lose Kevin Durant, this is like Kyrie Irving double. It's like when you lose these guys, your team gets so much worse. And that's where the Nets are, and we're headed back toward a scrappy kind of see what we got team and not a championship contender.
Yeah, and you know, it's funny too. You asked me this around the Kyrie Irving trade and what was my first initial feeling or sense specifically as it related to Kyrie, and I said relief, because you take this seismic thing that's been kind of hanging over the franchise off the table. The relationship between Kyrie and the franchise completely different than the one between Kevin Durant and the franchise, and we'll talk about how that impacted this deadline move with him. But I will say, like, I'm obviously completely bummed that Kevin Durant is not a Brooklyn Net. And this again felt like I was like, all right, it's not what I wanted, but there was a sense of additional relief of, okay, I don't have to go the rest of this season knowing that this thing is looming, because the first thing that happens when the deadline ends and Kevin Durant is still a Brooklyn Net is all the news comes out about what they tried to do, what didn't work, how was Kevin Durant feeling, what did he really want. So we all but would have known that Kevin Durant was going to be traded this offseason. So then we're just counting down the minutes. And I know that, hey, maybe another 30 games of Kevin Durant and some playoff basketball would have been a nice send-off. And I think that this felt like you ripped off the first 15, 20% of the Band-Aid with Kyrie. Here's the other 80%. And now I flipped my mind immediately to start to say, what do we have? What does it look like going forward? Where is this franchise headed? And it did lead to some other frustrating things around this deadline when it came to pass here today.
Yeah, we're going to get into some of the more of the deadline pieces later, and we'll talk about some of the pieces that came back. There's a lot to get into. Obviously, Adam put an absolute hero effort in overnight doing it. Go back, you can get the instant reaction. It's probably actually one of the quickest reactions in all of the NBA, like any media. Adam was up there for an hour live overnight doing that. So go back and check that out on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to YouTube as well. I like an absolute hero slept all the way through it till 3 a.m. was up at 3 a.m. and ready to go. Yeah, no, I know what you're saying, because what's nice to root for sometimes is stability. I get that part of it. Like
I've had hours to process this, Doug. I've been up, so I've just been processing all day long.
You're rooting for, like with a team, it's nice to root for stability. It's nice to know what you're kind of getting. I think it's nice to kind of feel some kind of fan connection to the same players. Like, it's why you can kind of fall in love with teams that aren't going to reach the highest levels, because you believe that they're trying their hardest and there's a certain level of effort. And there was the feeling before the Kyrie and KD piece that came when those guys came in with the clean sweep. It was like, hey, there's a culture here. All the buzzwords you hear about a team. Kind of feel like they started with the Nets culture and like doing things the right way and kind of pulling yourself up. And then when they got Kyrie and KD, that shifted. Now, obviously you do that move 101 times out of 100. But it clearly shifted the overall fan experience, right? From a developmental, we were so far down in the pits, and now we're kind of like bringing all these unknown guys up, like the Karis LeVerts and the Dinwiddies of the world, right? And Jared Allens and D'Lo and all these guys that are like either reclamation projects or never were projects and turned into kind of like quasi rotation / stars kind of dudes. Mm-hmm. I get all that. And I can see why, as a fan, you would want to maybe go back to that part of like, are we going to do another offseason where we're wondering? Like, I'd just like to know. Yeah, I don't want to get divorced, but it'd be better just to kind of know at this point, right? If it's going to happen or not. So I totally get that part of it. And I totally get from a fan experience why there is a level where that is better. At the same time, to feel like the Nets had gotten this so close to this, like it was so close. And it was actually probably so close to being good for a long time. And maybe I'm being too optimistic. Maybe I'm putting too much trust in like the stability of a guy like Kyrie to be able to do that over the long term, which it does not seem like he can, right? And maybe I'm, when you get guys that are on their third teams and thinking that like this is the time it all works out, that can be a crazy feeling too. It's like, yeah, she or he broke up with their last, 5 boyfriends or girlfriends, but I'm the one. It's like, hey, no, you're not. Like, you're not. It's not going to work. And so, like, maybe that's just, putting the blinders on too much, right? And I think there's a situation. So, long story short, I think I'm with you on the reset part, and maybe this is like me taking a healthy dose of copium, but I get the part where the stability aspect will lend itself to like a new talking points around this team, and they just lost Kevin Durant. You never get him back. This dude's a top 10 player of all time, and you just don't get these guys back. And I think that's the part that's really probably going to take a little bit as a fan to get over, is that they did it. They did the thing. Yeah. And then they nearly never won anything with it. Not really his fault, but never won anything. And then now it's kind of just over.
So coming up here in a second, we'll talk about the key decision that the Brooklyn Nets, Joe Tsai and Sean Marks made around the Kevin Durant trade, and why that should be viewed as a good thing in terms of resetting their timeline as a franchise and their reputation around the league.
All right. First, going to talk to you about our friends over at Rocket Money. Rocket Money used to be Truebill. It's a personal finance app. It helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions. It monitors your spending, helps you lower your bills. It's all in one place. It's really just kind of an all-in-one app to make sure you're doing things right. A lot of this stuff can kind of slip by us. I know for me, it was like multiple Paramount Plus subscriptions at the same time that Rocket Money had to find for me. These things that have gone on for absolute ever. Even before Rocket Money, it was Sirius Satellite Radio. Forget about it. I don't even want to know how much I sunk into those guys without ever listening. You got to get Rocket Money to get all of this stuff together for you. There's just too many subscriptions out there. Your name's in too many places. The credit cards are in too many places. 80% of people have subscriptions they've forgotten about. And you get that free trial. It kind of just lasts forever. Rocket Money will quickly and easily identify those subscriptions so you can stop paying for the ones you want. They'll find them and you just press cancel. Rocket Money just cancels it for you. That's the other thing. You're not trying to jump through all these hoops of like, you just want to quit. You just want to quit that streaming service and you just can't figure it out now. Forget it. Rocket Money does it for you. Over 3 million people have used Rocket Money, saving the average person, here we go, up to $720 a year. Stop throwing your money away. Cancel unwanted subscriptions. Manage your expenses the easy way by going to rocketmoney.com/LockedOnNBA. That's rocketmoney.com/LockedOnNBA. rocketmoney.com/LockedOnNBA.
Okay, so the last piece around the Kevin Durant trade, and then we'll get into the assets and the players and where we think this can go from here, is that it came out that effectively the Phoenix Suns were the team that the Brooklyn Nets negotiated with. This was not, and we speculated about if this could happen, how would the Nets approach it? Everybody, give me your best and final offer now. We're taking our decision and we're making it. Instead, as we know, the team that Kevin Durant had kind of been looking at in the offseason when he initially made the trade request, the Phoenix Suns, were the only team they negotiated with. Now, I can look at the deal unto itself and say, I think you did a good job in what you got back. You're never going to feel like you got the one-to-one value of a Kevin Durant. But I think it was the right move to do here because it contrasts dealing with Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving and the organization had a number of issues over his tenure. They didn't send him to LA where he wanted to go. They sent him to Dallas for the best package they thought they could get. Kevin Durant didn't have issues. Things didn't work out. You want to go to Phoenix? We're sending you to Phoenix. And that at least I think does send the signal to other players in the league that, yes, we had a bad experience with this player, but we do believe in treating guys the right way. And we did right by the guy who's regarded as one of, if not the best player in the NBA.
Yeah, the most fired up I got actually was hearing this report because I get what you were saying. The part where, hey, we want to do right by you. There was Shams talked about this a little bit and saying they were in agreement that over the summer, and we kind of expected this, right? We knew that when he rescinded the trade offer, we suspected that there was some other conversation that went on and said, hey, play this one out. We can't do it right now. Let's see what happens. And like literally they used almost the same exact words we used, which was like, if it all goes south, then we'll revisit this thing. Yep. So the part where they were doing right by him, I see what you're saying. And you want to send this new signal out there that like you're superstar friendly and all this other stuff. At the same time, with things like this, because like the implication here is they only really dealt with Phoenix. And with Shams, they said things started on Sunday night. And it's been going since then, like basically Sunday through this, Kevin Durant was radio silent. This has been going on since Sunday. And like, that's how basically since the Kyrie thing, like they were engaged in this talk and they're just hammering out all the pieces. So I get what you're saying about sending a signal for other players to like, be like, hey, look at us, look how we do right. Like you don't want to be here. We'll send you off. At the same time, like you get one chance to send out this like otherworldly talent and have everyone just pay as much as possible to get him. The part where you hamstring it on some like hope that another player will not only internalize that, but like also have it be part of their decision making is so crazy to me that like it's actually malpractice. Like it's so malpractice. Like they have one chance.
How much more do you think they could have gotten?
I don't know, but
right.
You should, if the implication is they didn't ask, that alone is malpractice. Like, so maybe this is the best deal. Right. Maybe this is the only one. Maybe this is the only one out there. Maybe no one's trading for him if he doesn't approve it. I get those other parts, right. But really this implication was, hey, pal, You want to go to Phoenix? Okay, let's get it going. Like, these people are all professionals. Like, how could you? It's total malpractice. If that is actually what happened, and I guess, you can only believe what you hear. Like, this is what came out. It is so bad to have done it this way because you have one chance to recoup like an entire franchise's worth of value that you basically stripped away to win with Durant. Like, it didn't work with Harden because Simmons can't play, like, it's a shell of himself. So that's 0 for 1 on that one, right? And they didn't trade Curry here, so it's like kind of 0 for 2 on that one. They got 1 pick out of it. With Kyrie, they kind of did the opposite with Kyrie, being like, hey, we don't want to trade him to the Lakers because we don't want to make him happy, so we'll take possibly a lesser deal.
Now, okay, hold on.
So okay, hold on. Last thing. Well, let me just finish this off. You can say, and maybe that's not what happened. Maybe you like the Dallas deal better. Fine. Okay. Doesn't matter. At least they engage with different teams and tell yourself a story. They did it. If they only engage with Phoenix on this trade, you have one chance to trade Kevin Durant. Like, you have to at least see if anyone can godfather the offer. And if they did not do that, it's borderline fireable to me. It's not good enough. They're not going to get fired, but it's not good enough to just try to do right by the player, because I just don't think anyone else cares. Like, you have to get all the assets back. I don't know. Maybe I'm overseeing it, but this is nuts to me.
No, well, see, my first thing is, again, reports being of like, we only negotiated with the Phoenix Suns. Okay, that could be factual. It can also be true.
That is.
No. I know what I'm saying, but we only negotiated with Phoenix Suns. That's the only team we negotiated with. Okay, but going all the way back to the offseason, that would be indicating that the Nets had no league-wide sense of where Kevin Durant's value stood, what teams had been willing and maybe were going to be willing to come to the table with, and then, having some informed decision. Now, again, it still can come down to saying, we're ultimately going to go with this. This is where he wants to go. But at least having some gauge of it. And all I mean by that is, if you had something in the wind, even a whiff of a rumor that some team was saying 7 first-round picks and players, etc., then we're talking about, listen, you may want to go there, but we're almost doubling the return on you in this trade. Sorry, it is what it is. If you're talking about being within, could have been 6 picks, but only 1 player, not 2 players, you like Bridges a lot more. The indications inside of these were that the new owner for the Phoenix Suns came out and basically said they were going to move off of it and maybe pivot to pursuing Pascal Siakam. And the new owner came in and said, no, Kevin Durant's the guy. Give up Bridges. That was like the sticking point there. And let's get this done. It's funny because to me, I would actually say the more malpractice thing for me would be not trading Kyrie Irving to the Lakers if you thought that's where your best package was going to come from. And I'm not saying the Lakers had enough capital to do so, but the spite move, that's more damning to me from a franchise perspective, because you're saying the best thing that we can do is the deal with LA, and we're going to choose to not do that because we had a frustrating relationship with this particular player. Like that, you know what I mean? Like that's been informed. I guess both have. Both decisions look like they were informed by their relationships with those players. Kyrie Irving, frustrated relationship. We're not going to honor where you want to go. You're going to Dallas. Kevin Durant, we just feel like things didn't work out in this run. We are going to get you where you want to go. And I do understand where you're coming from. And I think I do take the big step back. And this is arguably the wrong way to look at it of, okay, this thing fell apart. And now in totality, what have we accomplished? And that's where I can just say the first couple of years of first round picks aren't going to be as critical as the later ones, but you ended up getting 5 first round picks, a pick swap, 7 second round picks, including the Crowder move, and 4 players. Now, to what level those players are going to be valuable going forward with this franchise, we'll find out over the next 30 games of this season. But I do think it would be wise for the fan base to say, talk to me either at the end of the year and talk to me going into this offseason, because you'll have a more clear view of what this team can be with Bridges, Johnson, Dinwiddie, Cam Thomas, Nicholas Claxton. You'll have a sense of what they are, and you'll also have a sense of what they can accomplish to make adjustments. If they turn any of these players that they brought in through these deals into more draft capital, then that goes right back into this trade. If Bridges ends up getting moved for 3 first-round picks in the offseason, or 2, whatever it is, well, now that's 7 or 8 first-round picks you got from Phoenix in that deal. So I do think there has to be some level of grace period before the instant analysis of it, which, by the way, is exactly what I got on and did at 1 a.m.
I'll be clear, though. I'm not giving an instant analysis on the packages. The packages or whatever, we'll evaluate those at some other point. All I'm saying is if they only engaged with one team on this trade for Kevin Durant, that alone, it actually doesn't matter. I wouldn't even care what the package was. If they'd gotten everything back, 27 first-round picks,
Right.
Ayton, and, they own an island in the Bahamas. Actually, none of that would matter to me.
Right.
Like that, it wouldn't matter to me. It would still be bonkers to only talk to one team. That's what I'm saying. These are mutually exclusive ideas. Yeah. The package is going to be the package, and maybe very well at the end of the day, this was the best thing, right? Okay, that's fine. All I'm saying is to do moves out of personal relationships, which it sounds like, because if you have a problem with the Kyrie thing, it actually falls into the same category.
Well, that's what I did say. It's the same thing. It's different applications.
You just like, we don't like Kyrie or whatever. Like, I'm not even saying we don't like Kyrie. I'm just saying it depends how you feel about the player. Right. Like, all I'm saying is
making emotional decisions is the wrong way to
emotional decisions around superstar players that want out is malpractice. It's really, really, really bad. And there's some other very questionable moves that were, or not moves that were made here at the end. But that's all I'm saying is that, look, Mikal Bridges is a good player. Yeah, he's fine. Like, he's good, right? They get good contracts. He's probably going to get better. He's going to get a chance to probably be a better offensive player. We're going to have lots of time to talk about Mikal Bridges and Dinwiddie and Dorian Finney-Smith. We're going to have tons of time to talk about these guys going forward. It's not that. It's very clear, and then we'll move on. But it's not about the players and the package at all. It's simply about the process. The process, if this was actually the process that they took with trading these two guys away, it's so bad. It's so bad. That's it. And it's actually, unless I hear different, I'll always think that it's a terrible process. And if it's just because you think it's going to send a signal to other future made up superstars that are that are going to tell themselves a story about you, that is frankly even worse.
Well, and honestly, too, it's like you said, fired. And you said that no one's going to get fired on this. Because, by the way, the one thing we can communicate is that Sean Marks and Joe Tsai, these things are happening. They're doing these decisions together. So whatever you think about the choices, it's not like there's some separation between what the owner wanted and what the GM was executing. But making decisions based on emotions can be a flawed process. And you can make the argument that all sides, that the players, the ownership, management, that every key figure inside of the Brooklyn Nets, going back to including James Harden, all made emotionally charged decisions around what they wanted to do, be, where, etc. All of that. You can make the case that everyone succumbed to the frustration of what's happened over these 3+ seasons, and then maybe arguably made irrational decisions. Because coming up here in a second, let's take a quick break. But coming up, some of the extra things that didn't happen at the deadline, which we're, I think, both frustrated around. And then also, where are both these players now? And are they in a better set of circumstances? Where I'll pose the question, does it matter if either one of them wins a championship to how you feel about them leaving Brooklyn?
All right, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the moves that were not made. We are live in YouTube, so make sure you subscribe over to YouTube. We'll get all into that in a second. Going to make myself feel better here. We're really excited to talk to you about our new sports betting partner for Locked On, the #1 sports book in America, and that is FanDuel. If you're new to FanDuel, it's even better. They have tons of great features, makes betting on sports very fun, super easy. You download FanDuel right now. You can bet on Super Bowl 57, still time, baby, Sunday, with a no-sweat first bet. You get up to $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. FanDuel lets you bet on everything from the money line, the point spreads, who will score a touchdown, and oh, baby, the props. I got a bunch of props in here. Dougie's not going to be on the podcast too much longer if we hit the 17-leg parlay over that we got going on that we got going for Super Bowl 57. Also, bummed myself out a little bit, but I did have to look at it. Phoenix Suns right now, 3rd overall on FanDuel at plus 480 for the NBA championship. But look, they're up there. It's accurate. That's what FanDuel does for you. FanDuel has got you covered. Super safe, very secure, very easy. Get paid those winnings instantly. You download the FanDuel app. You join FanDuel today at FanDuel.com/lockedon to claim your no sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
So the one thing before we dive into what didn't have a deadline is just, I want to quickly say that, because I tried to process myself through all this stuff, and I think a lot of fans either still holding on to being frustrated with the organization, which I can appreciate. Fans are still holding on to being frustrated with Kyrie Irving and even Kevin Durant. It's whatever. You try to cast your emotional baggage somewhere. And ultimately, Like I can't. I watched a little bit of Kyrie in Dallas. I said, yeah, looks just like Kyrie. Like there he goes doing his thing. And
he had a completely bonkers quote. Sorry to interrupt you because I know everyone gets mad at that. He had a completely bonkers quote too, which I'll get to. I don't know if we'll even get to it on this. We'll get to it like in the live YouTube with the group later. I mean, this one is. I mean, this one's the real chef's kiss. It's really something. Keep going. Sorry.
And no. And you know what, though? It was like, again, he gave that quote. We'll see if we get to it. I went, great. You know why? You don't play for me anymore. Likewise for Kevin Durant. Like, do I want to see him do well and win a championship with the Phoenix Suns? Yes. I had to mentally process through the idea of, well, what if he never wins a title with the Phoenix Suns? Does that alleviate some of the frustration around what wasn't accomplished here? No, it doesn't. Why? Because it's not my franchise and it actually doesn't impact things, right? Like, so I've tried to strip away all of that baggage from it. And I was doing pretty good thinking about all these players and stuff. And then I started thinking about, because I assumed something was going to happen here before 3:00 with certain players on this roster. And when that didn't happen, I did. And then you said it. I was like, you know what? There is a couple of things here that are bothering me. And specifically, as you mentioned, it's going to be Seth Curry and the fact that he is still on this roster.
How is he still on the team? How is he still on the team? His expiring contract. Like, what's the plan? Like, for anything. Like, move him into room. Like, get a second round pick. Like, they don't need him. Like, this team is so deep. We'll get into like, what the possible rotations are. I need someone smarter than me to explain this one to me. How is he still on the team? Like $8 million can shoot. Maybe he just got hurt at just the worst time. Like that could be it. Like that. Maybe that's the whole story. He got hurt and because he sat out the last couple games. Like maybe he's just hurt at just the wrong time. And that's enough to scare anybody away from like adding it on. But the contract's nothing. Like it's limited playing time for him going forward. They're going to lose him for nothing. Like, I just don't understand. What's funny? And this relates to the Durant thing, which I was going to close with before, but it's all actually kind of wrapped into the same thing. When I woke up in the middle of the night, had a text from, this hilarious too. No, actually yours isn't the first one I saw.
Oh, that's right.
My phone was just like an absolute flamethrower, right? And when I woke up and saw it, but I had another text, shout out Mike Pack. All it said was, Doug, what do you do in situations like this? Do you have a bat phone? And I thought, oh no.
Well, I should. Well, I apparently should.
So I'll be honest with you. I never was emotional about that. Like, I actually understand this part of it. It's hilarious. The part where I get the frustrated is I actually get way more frustrated about process than I do about like sort of results. Like the results are what they are. Like that's just done, right? It's over. But as long as there's good process, I actually can excuse a lot of different things because I think that's just kind of how I think my brain works. Like, I'm like, okay, good process, bad results. Like if you do a lot of betting and if you do a lot of prognostication and stuff like that, you actually have to live like that. You have to be like, you try to improve your process, but the results are going to be what they are. I actually got the most fired up like now hearing these reports and then the Curry thing, because it actually doesn't seem like it might seem like a little rudderless here. And that's the part where I'm really questioning like what is going on, because between the Kyrie thing, the Kevin Durant thing, Seth Curry still being on the roster and they have an open roster spot too. Like, so whatever, we'll see what that turns into. I really actually feel like the process really crumbled here at like near the end. And that's the most frustrating part. And it's really funny about what people get frustrated about, because I actually don't get frustrated about the Durant and Kyrie things. I'm like, yeah, whatever, this sports, it happens. But if the team you root for feels like they're screwing things up, that actually does really bother me.
Right. Well, I know. And again, like, and it's like, we're operating under, again, you can only take information at face value. Right. And I do feel like this is true of like the entire era of this. You get one report and then 6 months later, you get the real revision of that report. And I don't think that's the case in this, but this is mostly around like, what did Kyrie say or think, or, Kevin Durant's intentions versus not. And only as weeks and months go by, do things start to crystallize a little bit. I do agree with you. I think now this gets forced on them in a lot of ways, because I don't think they saw Kyrie Irving demanding the trade. And then that's the first snowball. So effectively, as of Friday, the Brooklyn Nets, in theory, went from the best December in franchise history to being a team that had to jettison 2 superstars in a matter of 4 days. So, there is certainly a level of pressure there. Now, you can make the case, hey, then don't move them. Don't make the move, especially with Kevin Durant, right? Just be like, sorry, we can't figure it out quickly enough. We're not going to do that. That's certainly a part of it. But beyond them, the Seth Curry one is frustrating. I had to walk myself back on a couple of other guys because I thought around like Royce O'Neal. I thought, well, you sent out a first round pick for him, but that was about supporting Kevin Durant and that roster. You can try to flip him here, but he is under contract next season as well. So there's flexibility. Maybe the injury for Curry is what holds it up. Joe Harris still being here doesn't surprise me at all. He's making $18 million. That's hard to move. And I wouldn't want the Nets to make any attaching assets to contracts to get off of money. That would feel like a mistake in that direction. Yuta Watanabe, we're running down the list here. It was like, hey, he's had a pretty darn nice season. Looks far better than anyone thought, but had to get the precautionary MRI. So he's not maybe available to move. So I think like when you look down the list, it really is Curry that jumped out at me. Even a guy like Patty Mills, who's only making, $6.5 million. But I got around him where I was like, oh, he's definitely not going anywhere. Because he's the mascot of the franchise now. Like they love him. And why? You're not worried about the money as much as you were. It's just $6 million. It's okay. You can sort that out later. So I came to terms with most of it. It was the Curry one when you brought that up that I just thought, you got five second-round picks for Jae Crowder. I don't even care what it was. It's really the money and just moving off of it. Give me 2 second-round picks for Crowder. It doesn't matter at that point. Anything to move off of him, especially when you saw the way that second-round capital was just flying around the NBA trade deadline like wildfire.
Yeah, look, I think there's just a lot of way. I think this is a ground shifting moment for the franchise. We are going to be evaluating this really this last month, but specifically these last 96 hours for years to come, right? Because the downstream effects of all this, of what these players become and what they end up getting and the draft picks they have, which I'll give a final tally of this before we get out of here, just to kind of round it all out. And look, in the grand scheme of things, is the Curry thing a huge deal? I mean, probably not, but I just think that a lot of these are signals that there are real problems with how some of this is going about the business.
Well, so here's what I'll say, and then because I want to give the full tally of everything that the Nets brought in here, and you can run that down. The one thing I will say is, and again, doesn't mean the process was perfect, but I said it when the Kyrie Irving trade request came in, and it was, you know what? All right. If you think the fan base, if you've been frustrated as a fan of the Brooklyn Nets over this Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant era, imagine how, regardless of responsibility or blame, whatever, imagine how Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, James Harden, Ben Simmons, but Sean Marks, Josiah, imagine how frustrated they've been at the fact that they did it. You said it earlier. They did it. They got the superstars and one playoff win. That was the result, right? And I do think wrongfully, but everyone does it. At some point, the weight of expectation and the frustration of not achieving even close to the goal, it does start to just come crumbling down around you. And I'll be very curious to your point about what this all looks like over the next 30 games of this season, the off season, and going forward. And this has been mostly negative down the stretch of this episode. I actually do feel okay. I do feel relieved, but I think Doug is making the right point that you can compartmentalize those two things and still look back and say, this is one messed up process that this organization went through.
Yeah, like I said, I think we'll have time to feel okay about it. I think there's enough things here that, the time will heal some of this, and some of these guys are going to get a chance to look a little different and better than the previous situation. So I think that, but I just wanted to go through sort of to make sure through it all, what exactly sort of maybe transpired here, and this is the front office we've really defended for years. So it's not even that. I've been pretty pro Marks. I think he's gotten a lot of things right. I think he's gotten the highest profile stuff wrong, that for sure. That's been, and now whoever you want to say whose fault it is, they chose to get into business with these guys. So that's on him. Right. But I kind of just wanted to be I wanted to make sure that I kind of sum that up correctly. All right, let's get out the door here and we'll stick around on YouTube for a little bit. A lot of people in there with questions. I have some started up already. If you're listening on the podcast feed, make sure that you jump over onto YouTube. This is courtesy of Alex Sturm from Nets Daily, friend of the podcast. And he was the one that I saw sum it up probably just the best here. So I'll just credit him because I'm going to read it. Out with the trade deadline. Out Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, TJ Warren, Markieff Morris. In Mikal Bridges, Spencer Dinwiddie, Cam Johnson, Dorian Finney-Smith. First rounders from the Suns in 23, 25, 27. A second rounder from the Mavs in 27. A first swap from the Suns in 28. Another first in 29, and then the Mavs first in 29, and then their second as well. So if you can follow all that, that is the list. And that
5 second round picks for Crowder.
And that's right. And all the second round picks for Crowder. So that is what I believe to be the full tally of that. Make sure that you jump in over onto YouTube. If you're not there, subscribe to Locked On Nets YouTube as we push toward 5,000 subscribers. And also, is that it? Nah, just do that. That's it. That's it. My head's spinning, buddy. It's a trade deadline day. Adam's on no sleep, and I'm little sleep and driving, and it's been a crazy and being on Twitter for what feels like my whole life. Go.
Love may have the longest arms, but it can still fall short of an embrace. Iva Marie Palmer.
One of the all-time great poets. We will be back again tomorrow, next week, talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.
All right, my friends, it is the Post Podcast. We'll stick around for a few minutes. Doug's been traveling. I've been, staring at the wall for hours now. So we won't do this as long. And you even said in the episode, Doug, plenty of time to kind of like dissect some of these things and also the long-term future. You had some comments start up here, so I'll dive into those. And it's a good practice because I didn't know what that was while I was in the middle of the podcast, wondering what are these starred items coming up here. So let's kick it off with.
This is the first one I was going to put in. I like this one. I hope Blade is still there. By the way, absolutely love the name Blade. If I had a son, Blade would have been the name, Blade Norrie. But we unfortunately only had daughters, and we were not allowed to name them Blade. So they so they got other names.
A little
Blade, whether it's your parent given name or just an acronym or just a regular name, much appreciated. Who is that, Adam? Who is the best player in the Nets? I think this is a good question.
It is a fascinating one.
It's not great when you can't answer.
Well, no, but I could.
Well, it's not. Oh, and here's the other thing. It's also not great when you can't just snap call it between two guys. So there's two ways to go with this. Like, you want this answer to always be either the most obvious guy, Giannis. That was easy. Who's next, right? So you want it to be like that. Worst case scenario, you got like two good players and they both might be good. So you're like what would be an example of this? It'd be like I can't even think of an example here. It's like, Paolo or Franz Wagner. That's not even it because it's Paolo. Right. But like, I can't think of I can't actually think of the answer. So
you said like Beal or Porzingis. Like, that's not like a great one, but like,
But even that one, you're like, it's two players. There'll always be the 7 seed. Yeah. Who is the best player in the Nets?
So it's interesting, right? Like, so the first place my mind went was like, well, Bridges, because he's the guy you're getting in this trade and he's the highest profile name. I don't know if that's true. He can be. Then I want to go back to the guy that we've been hyping so much all year long, and Nicholas Claxton. But I think the ceiling is still to be determined. So he's still growing, and it's hard to don't even try to look at 3-game sample size and say that Cam Thomas is going to emerge as whatever. I don't think I could say right now, honestly. If I had to, it's I might just say Bridges because he's been the higher profile guy. And if you look at Phoenix when they had injuries there, his step-up sample size was very impressive in terms of what you think he could be in a more, in a bigger role, in a heavier role, and a heavier require of him. So I'll go with Bridges, and I'll be happy when like some other guys kind of nip at his heels as we see them play.
Yeah, I would say it's definitely Bridges. Like in just terms of two-way, like you mentioned, right. Booker out this year. His usage rate spiked and the efficiency really didn't take really anything of a hit. If anything, he got better, right? I mean, he got worse from the field, better from three. So it depends on like how you looked at it. I ended up watching not even knowing about this trade. I ended up watching like a kind of a ton of Suns this year, mostly just for like kind of I'm being generally interested. And then also had just some like random bets on Sun stuff this year that I was really wanting to tune in for. And like he has tried to get into the mid-range more. It hasn't totally worked out, but he's trying. He'll definitely take more shots with this team, like because just when you're with Booker, Chris Paul, and with 8 and 2, like she should have some more opportunities. So I think it's Bridges. And like if the team wants to be really good, like your best player can't be Mikal Bridges, right? So I think that but this is probably a discussion for another day. But yeah, I would say Bridges.
Our team is super long and all pretty good defenders. Not to mention there are heaps of great locker room guys in there. Again, this is what you do after you lose your superstars, and it can also be true. When we talked to Nick Angstad from Locked On Mavs, he was like, "Hey, you guys know Spencer Dinwiddie, and Dorian Finney-Smith is like a great locker room guy. He's a full team buy-in." We played the quote from him the other day. I do think that, and when I was doing the lives last night and this morning, Suns fans were in there saying, hey, thanks so much for Kevin Durant, but also saying like Bridges, Cam Johnson, these are great personalities, great guys, and talented players. Like, let's brass tacks it. These guys have upside in their careers. I do think that in the old dial it back to where we once were, the Brooklyn Nets do seem to have brought in a collection of players that you can feel really good about being like, hey, they're all bought in, and that's a byproduct of not being a team that has elite superstar talent with supporting cast around them.
Yeah, like everyone's a wing now. So the team is all wings. It's going to be a weird team to watch. Like Cam's going to score a lot here. Dinwiddie's going to score probably a lot. You know, Bridges will see his usage rate tick up. They don't have tons of other scorers after that, right? And so Simmons, you hope, is going to start playing a lot of minutes. They have a lot of the same archetype here. I guess they'll be interesting if they just go super frenetic on D and switch everything, and they're going to have the same rebounding problems they've always had. And that's just going to be what it is. And I think that, you know, like, could Cameron Johnson, he's a restricted free agent. We didn't talk about him. Cam Johnson is going to play minutes. I actually think they're going to actually have a hard time finding minutes for all these guys. Like, they have the team's almost like too deep. It's like
one of the curiosities is like what falls by the wayside here, or
this is the other Curry thing. This is the other Curry thing. It's like, not only is he out of here, but like, one of these guys going to play? Like, they almost have too many guys. Like, they have too many NBA rotation guys. And I'll tell you right now, all of these guys expect to play. Like, these are not a lot of these guys that have come in have had like solid roles. And there's guys in the Nets that already have solid roles. Like, all of a sudden they just basically got rid of Durant. Basically what they did was they got rid of Durant, Kyrie, a few guys that didn't play at all, and then brought in all guys that kind of do play and should get playing time.
And just recently introduced another mouth to feed in Cam Thomas, right? Like, you just kind of like whatever level. It's not going to be, 40 minutes a night necessarily, but he's going to play. He's clearly going to be an important role to this team. So you also increase that too. Yeah, it will be interesting how they balance it out. This one, so I totally hear what you're saying, Jay, and you've been a frequent flyer with us. Yes, the goal is to win a championship, not to watch young players. That's true. I don't think anyone's okay with losing Kevin Durant, but the one thing, it's not even pushback. Did you ever think that the Brooklyn Nets were going to be able to sign Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant? They've never been a franchise that was ever perceived as a place that anyone would go. If you're coming to New York, you're going to the Knicks. And guess what? They signed with the Brooklyn Nets. So I push back on the idea that like they can't be right back in a place to attract superstar talent if they want to. All it takes is being in free agency, having a guy on the open market, and being able to give a max contract to them. If you can do that, then you can sell them on a lot of the other things that you're capable of doing as a franchise. So, and by the way, in this moment, I agree with you. It's, it's brutal. And there's not going to be a superstar that walks in the door tomorrow, but next season, 2 seasons from now, things are going to look a lot different. I think that's a little bit of frustration of a fan, which I completely understand.
Yeah, I can see people having this opinion. I feel Nets did the right thing with KD on his request since he did the ball out. I see it. That's just what they did. So that is exactly what they did, and they try to stick with it. I just had problems with your like what you do for your franchise in terms of assets and stuff, right? Like, so that was my.
Because I think to clarify what Doug's stance on it, it's if you told Doug that the Suns, the Pelicans, and the Raptors all put their offers in front of the Brooklyn Nets, and the Nets said, "Hey, it's all equal. We looked them over. We feel fine with any of them." And Durant said, "I want to go to Phoenix. That's where we'll send you." But it's about if those 3 offers got sent in the mail and they tore up 2 envelopes and only opened the one from the Phoenix Suns.
Yeah, that's just all. That's the and you can always send it to them, but like there's a world where you get blown away by somebody else, and you just have to, as a franchise, take the best offers. And
can I sidebar something here that I'm very curious about? I wondered if the Nets tried to do anything with the Ben Simmons contract. I would assume they would have stopped short of like attaching real capital to move off of it, because you don't need to make that decision now. But I do find it interesting that he is a young player. Obviously, we've seen the sample size. Like, what happens with him inside of this rotation over the last 30 games of the year? Like, there to me. So here's what I'm curious about. I wouldn't be surprised if Ben Simmons gets shut down at some point over these last 30 games, because if you believe that he is still coming back from the back injury and he's been very much in and out of the lineup and struggling, it actually be kind of easy now after getting the championship aspirations out of the door. Now you say, well, yeah, we just want you to get healthy so you can come back next year and be a contributor. There's really nothing to lose in trying that, as opposed to pushing him out there for 30 more games and maybe just having him continue to show that it's not going to ever get to that place. And I am curious about even his limited role. Like we talked about the other day. You said, like, even for what he isn't, he still is a high-level defender, and he still is a great facilitator. There is a role here, obviously, for him. But I was just curious about that.
I think once you trade Kyrie and KD, there's no push to trade Simmons at that point. But like all-time low value, you're not winning anything. You have a chance to possibly reclaim some of his value. It's at an all-time low now anyway. I am not shocked that I would never have attached an asset to get off the contract. They don't need to do that anymore. They got a ton. They might even got all the way out of the tax here. I got to look at that.
Yeah, I have to go and double check, because it was like 20.
They shed a ton.
The Kyrie deal. They cleared more with the Kessler Edwards out to the Kings. So they cleared a lot there.
And they cleared even more with KD.
Yeah,
they cleared tons and tons of salary here. Checkbook season. So, prayers up for Josiah and the bottom line. So thank goodness. But I think that overall, at that point, with a bunch of wings and guys who can kind of shoot, and there's not the pressure, the superstar pressure is off. There's no Kyrie and KD there for him. Who knows what that relationship was? It doesn't seem like it was super fruitful. I'm not going to say it was bad. It didn't sound like they were best friends in the world. So I don't think at that point you need to light other things on fire just to get him out of there. I think you hope that you can do something and he gets healthy and the back gets better and he's a year removed from the surgery. The shutting it down thing's interesting. I had not really thought about that. I think that's on the table. I think there's a world on the table where he starts just playing a lot different and better. I wonder if the pressure's off. No one's expecting them to win the championship now. The expectations are zero. No one's going to pay attention. They're not going to be a national story anymore. This is over. People are
4 national games too. In the next 10, there's 4 of them that are on ESPN right now.
But in general, right? No one's talking about this team. The media scrutiny will lessen here. No one's waiting for him to turn a corner so they can make a run through the East. All that's gone now. And so I do wonder if the weight of expectations around that will actually turn the tide on him a little bit too. I think here, let me put it this way. It may have no effect, but it certainly won't hurt him, I don't think.
Yeah. Brandon with, I don't think they traded Curry because they didn't want to take back salary for next year or are planning to sign him with the TPA. Well, the signing with the TPA would be a mistake. It's the Curry era in Brooklyn should be over as well.
There's no chance he's on the team next year.
And I get what you're saying about taking back a salary of some kind. This was going to be this was picks. You move him for capital of some kind.
Take him for a second. Who cares? Honestly, people threw around seconds like they were grains of sand today. So many second round picks were moved that actually made me wonder if every team had 50 of them. There was every single trade involved 50 second round picks. It became a joke over the day.
I could be. I don't know for sure. I could be Kermit the Frog here, just a mouthpiece for the Brooklyn Nets.
That's weird how that works. How is that how would that even be? Oh, this is great. I don't even know. What? I don't even know how that would be interpreted. I mean, it's clearly true, but I'm just wondering how everyone figured it out.
Right. No. Yeah. How did you connect the dots? You sons of guns. You guys are on top of this sort of thing.
Sorry. Go ahead. I'll take this one. Oh,
guys, stop.
I think when you lose Kevin Durant,
past man.
I think when you lose Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving in the space of a week, you can take 10 minutes to talk about it. And I agree. Yeah. Look, we're not going to probably do a post game tonight just because of the way things are going, but we'll do it. Our first post game will be when the team is at a full strength, right? When that should be the next game after this one. So we probably won't do one tonight. Short of something crazy happens. Adam and I sometimes will agree that we're not going to do something, and then the game gets great, and because we watch every game no matter what. But it's just with the schedule. So I could see a world where we just say something crazy happens. Cam drops 50, we'll be back. But I think otherwise, maybe not.
Higher long term. Yeah, they gave him next year as well. So he'll already be there next year. Oddly enough, I will say I was talking with Sean Woodley from Locked On Raptors, and they were saying, that franchise, what are they doing? Nick Nurse's contract is going to be coming up. There are worlds where you can pivot to a new coach and a new pedigree. Now, I don't think, again, 30 games. plenty of opportunity here for Jacques Vaughn to continue to do what we think he was doing well with the superstars. I mean, we've had things we've questioned about, some rotation stuff, Joe Harris playing too much, etc. But at the same time, like, this is also a showcase for him. And I think, you know what, man, conspiracy theory. It's like, man, you put him in place of the head coach and gave him another year. Like, that was weird at the time, right? We all thought, man, you just locked him in for an extra season. Cut to a couple months later, you don't have any superstars and a bunch of young talent that you want to develop. I wonder if Kenny Atkinson returns. We don't know for sure, friends.
I think Atkinson's going to stay. One other thing, I was trying to, I got to read. You know who are the best? This is not the Nets related. The Lakers. The Lakers had such an unbelievable trade deadline here, to the point where I don't even know how they did it. So
sorry, as a tone setter, when they made that trade, and then they made a subsequent one too, but it was after the Kevin Durant trade, before the deadline. I tweeted out, I was like, well, with this trade, you got to assume the Nets make another move here, because it was such a juicy, like, oh my God, like, you pulled that off for relatively nothing. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so this is what the Lakers did at the deadline. They brought in D'Angelo Russell, who actually fits that team, I think, pretty well. Malik Beasley, and Jared Vanderbilt, so added some like sort of wings that they didn't have. Added Nets faithful favorite Mo Bamba. So that one stings.
Yeah,
that one stings for a certain there's a certain segment of the Nets fan population that was more upset about the Lakers getting Bamba than they were about the Nets sending out Kyrie and Katie. Hold on, I'm gonna go through the rest of the team. And then Roy Hachimura, we already knew that one. Devon Reed, and they got brought in a few seconds, and they got off of Westbrook. They had to trade one of the first round picks, but it was top 4 protected, which I think it got out with the protections. And then they just got off Beverly, Thomas Bryant, Kendrick Nunn, Damian Jones, and Juan Toscano Anderson. Like, I actually just don't even know
Anthony Davis.
I actually just don't even know how they did it. It's kind of unbelievable.
There was something weird about it where you were like, okay, like, league-wide consensus, like, let's help the Lakers lift their spirits. Like, there was like, that's what it had, like, that kind of vibe to it, just because like every single component was like, oh, well, that was easy. Oh, that was actually a lot less costly to get rid of Westbrook than maybe you thought it was going to be, like, and on down the line for sure.
Well, they somehow got the 5 best players in all the trades they did. Like, it's pretty tough.
A quick side question that I want to highlight this one about the lineup here, just for the sake of fun. I'll say real quick, Hector. Yes, I think that this is the starting lineup that I would go with in the infancy. Now you can talk about Dorian Finney-Smith. Johnson was just starting there. 16 out of his 17 games, he was back from his injury. I don't know though. I had to think about that, like, kind of long and hard, and the fit with that. Everyone's fit together and what that's going to look like, but. One moment I did pause and think, oh, with all this capital, a guy, again, it was about what they wanted to do when they had the stars, but you also still need this player. I did wonder, I was like, man, I wonder if like Naz Reid is a gettable guy, because he's young and you could keep him around, and you're still going to need that type of player. Like, you need that right now on this roster. I did wonder for a minute, like, at the right price point, has to be low enough, about like, oh, maybe I would have gone and like tried to make that move to get him in the door, knowing that you're going to try to maybe bring him back and pair with Claxton, etc. Like, that was maybe one of the only things that came to mind of like, hey, young player that maybe is attainable here, that I wouldn't have hated. Like, there was no spending I want to see the Nets do, but that did cross my mind.
Hey, I'm not surprised that after Durant, they weren't in like player acquisition mode, right? Yeah. Like, the team's already so deep. We already mentioned, like, it's going to be super hard to find minutes on this team, because like, even putting up, I don't know where that comment went, but even putting up that starting lineup, I can make 6 starting lineups here. There's lots of cases that not even start like Cam and play Bridges at the 2. Like, I think there's
like, right. Start shuffling guys down.
Make Cam a 6-man where you have to like run him with a few of these few guys. I don't know. And then we didn't mention Simmons. Like, I think there's so many ways they can go here. I think what we're going to see from this team, honestly, is we're going to see a situation where they're going to still try to win games. I don't think anyone's going to be playing like 37 minutes a game on this team. I think it's going to be like a lot of 30-minute guys with a lot of different rotations, getting lots of guys long looks, seeing what they want to move forward with, and seeing what they might want to dump in the offseason, flip in the offseason. I think that's what this is going to be about.
Very clean back-to-back regiments around not.
If they get into the play, I mean, they probably screwed themselves a little bit here by banking too many wins, because there is a world, because they have their own pick this year, and Houston sucks so bad that they're not going to have to swap it. Where, like having their own pick this season is like the one time where they wouldn't have to swap with the Rockets, and the Rockets are so bad that like almost for sure the Rockets are going to be lower. So there's a world where they could have had like a lottery pick this year. And I wonder how much like that plays into what they're trying to do. It doesn't seem like sort of what they want to do as an organization. They've never really been like this. And frankly, they're probably just like too low. They're not great, but they're probably too low level good to even, they couldn't even tank. Like they're 14 guys deep or something like that. They can't tank. So
I was going to say, 32 wins just in the East alone. Like just go down to, Indiana,
they're going to be, look, they get into the play-in and lose. Like that wouldn't be the worst scenario. Like,
and I think that matters too. Like if they could have tanked down and had their own pick, they probably would have loved to go that route. And if they were low enough in win totals, but also like this is, I think, again, in the old perception deal, it's really hard to lose your superstars and then polish off the season by losing 25 out of your last 30 games, right? Like that would be also equally brutal for the, for the fan base and for what you want to do going forward. You cannot go into Detroit Pistons, Orlando Magic, territory, Houston Rockets. Like you can't afford to do it because you see how hard it is to climb out of that. They got a bunch of capital that they can work with. And like they're in the Eastern Conference right now. They're going to be somewhere between the 10 to 8. Like that's where they're going to be. And maybe with the wins that they've stockpiled here, they keep their head above water and avoid the 8 through 10 potentially. It depends on, the Knicks, the Miami Heat. Like the teams behind them didn't make seismic moves here. So it's not going to be
nobody did anything. So, like
they got Josh Hart for the Knicks, right?
The Knicks got, I mean, I'll run down the teams real quick. I'm probably going to miss somebody here. Celtics did nothing. Bucks got Crowder. Sixers got, they traded away Thibault and they got in McDaniels.
Yeah.
I'm just going off the top of my head here. Cavs did nothing. Nets, we already know. Heat did nothing. Knicks got Josh Hart and sent out Reddish. Hawks kept Collins. They traded like Kaminsky and Holiday, one of the Holiday brothers. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. Like I said, I'm just going fully off the top of my head here. Bulls did nothing. Raptors got Pirtle and sent out Kem Birch, who wasn't playing. Wizards did nothing. Pacers did like a bunch of like low level stuff to get themselves up to the floor, and then released a couple guys that actually wondered if the Nets would sign, like Terry Taylor and Goga Batazzi. Like I wonder if the Nets have a roster spot, and those guys kind of play, not Taylor as much, but Batazzi is a center. So I was wondering if the Nets maybe go somewhere with that. And then Magic Hornets, the Hornets sold a little bit, and Pistons got Wiseman, which is interesting. And for Sadiq Bey. So that was the whole Eastern Conference. I don't think I missed anything there. Yeah, no one really improved. And actually, if you went through a few teams' Twitter, just did a run around the league real quick about how teams were feeling. There were a lot of teams that are really frustrated here. Like the Heat fans were like, "Hey, what are we doing? Like, how do we not do anything?" Right? Like, I think that there was frustration from some other squads.
And here's what's funny about it, because the top of the Eastern Conference, I would say, like, if you're Boston, again, small move for Milwaukee, for Philly, but like for the most part, didn't do anything, right? So, and even Cleveland as well. Once the Nets trade away Kyrie and Kevin Durant, it lowers your necessity to go do something. Now, if you're talking about competing with those teams in and around you in the top 3-4 seeds, fine. But for the most part, like, hey, we feel good about what we are, and there's one less team chasing us down. And I do wonder, even for the other teams, like fan bases being frustrated with the Miami Heat or the Knicks, the Hawks. Again, you can look and say, well, we're gonna, as far as just this season, we're probably gonna gain ground here, because the Nets are gonna slowly start to drop off a little bit over the back end of this season. Like the Nets trades, especially Kevin Durant, obviously. Like Kevin Durant's trade to Phoenix set off a chain reaction in the West of like, certain teams need to make big decisions about what they did. And I asked Nick about this, Locked On Mavs. I was like, it's weird, man. You went and got Kyrie. They didn't make any subsequent moves, and it may not matter to have him now. The Lakers got so much better. The Phoenix Suns vaulted up there. I mean, the Mavericks are going to be in the mix there, but it's like you went and got Kyrie, and you might not make the conference finals. Like you darn well better be bringing him back on the extension in the offseason, because otherwise you gave up some assets to go get a guy that secured you a second round playoff appearance. Like it's a pretty brutal beat potentially for them, because they made their move early.
All right, let me roll through. I think we're going to break out of here in a second. Yeah. Long day. I'm going to roll through two other questions. I'm going to give rapid fire responses. Adam, jump in if you see anything. This was Gary Gary's been in here, a lot of good questions. I think that you're going to see a lot of ball movement with this offense. I think they're just going to go with shooters that frankly, the wings some of these guys can't dribble all that well. So I think you're going to see Simmons pushing the pace, and they'll still try to rely on that with Dinwiddie and Cam. And I think there'll still be some ISO stuff. We'll see some high pick and roll a little bit more than we've seen. But that's it. Add a thought, and I have one more.
Yeah, just though, I'm very curious to see Nicholas Claxton, right? I mean, he played without the superstars at times here, but this will be fun to see what he is as the functional big that's gonna, facilitate some things at the top of the key. He's gonna do all his usual stuff defensively, but it's gonna be fun to see how he interacts with guys that aren't Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, but are very still talented players around him.
All right, last one. Why are you guys so down on Curry? Not down on Curry at all. It has nothing to do with Curry. Like Curry a lot. It was just where his contract is and what the Nets need right now and what they need going forward. They don't need a guy. He's not part of the future. So I just don't. It was just when someone's not part of the future at this point in terms of age and contract, you have to try to get something for him. Nothing against Seth Curry. Oh, all right. Last thought. I do think what we're gonna have here for the last couple months of this season is I think we are going to start working ourselves into a scrappy team, youngish, veteranish guys. Like that's kind of what the team is made up of right now, right? It's a lot of
26, 27 and under.
26, 27 role players on other decent teams, good professional guys. Just have are good players, but no one's really great. And I wonder if this team turns into this sort of plucky upstart, everyone kind of playing for their own contracts to some degree, but playing for the team also because their skill sets sort of work out like that, and that they take some games from teams along the way here. And I think that actually that is this team could set up to be deep enough to be fun during the regular season, would have trouble in the playoffs, obviously, but a decent 500 regular season team that's going to beat some teams better than them for sure.
Yeah. 28 games to go here in the remainder of the season. I won't be shocked if they're at or slightly above 500 across those games, because I think they're capable of it. I think the short term will be fascinating to watch here and sorting some things out. I think there will be some L's on the board here just by a byproduct of having 4 completely new bodies in this room and trying to figure it all out.
For sure. But what you're not going to have is I don't think you're going to have attitudes here. I don't think you're going to have a lot of egos. I think these guys kind of know where they all are, sort of NBA pecking order wise. Mm-hmm. And I think and they've shown themselves to be really good team players. And I think that's what they have on the just have the roster right now.
Guys, get over to YouTube, subscribe to the channel. This is going to kind of mark it, man. There will be a time when we'll reflect back again, but this is pretty much it. This is where we close the chapter on Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. And now you're going to hear us talking about this roster, these players, who looks good, who surprises us, how does Cam develop, and what is Jacques Vaughn doing with this deep roster of talent and trying to figure out who can be the guys that rise to the top of these rotations. So listen, it's a different era in Brooklyn Nets basketball, but it's a really exciting one, at least for me. I get excited about what could be possible for this team going forward. What was that comment? Put it back up there.
If this is true, and I haven't been wetting my beak on this Nets money, then I'm going to be annoyed. Because
there has been a bit of a situation where I said, no, we'll sort it out. We'll chop up the pot at some point, but I'll go ahead and I'll add it up myself and then determine what your cut is. I like it.
All right.
You interrupt me
off and I'm cutting you off and you getting paid
for the organization.
We're both cutting each other off now. So between me cutting you off and you getting paid by the Nets, it's going to be a good rest of the year in Locked On Nets territory. Thanks to everyone for jumping in here. Heck of a trade deadline, to say the least. New look Nets. We'll be back again, obviously, for the rest of the season, talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.